Welcome to our freshman transition presentation. Typically, we hold an evening event where we're able to meet in person to talk about your students' transition to the high school. Due to the current situation, we still wanted to create an opportunity to introduce ourselves and share important information about Greeley High School. We know this is a lengthy presentation, but hope it can answer many of your questions.
Hi, my name is Jonna Mulligan. I'm one of the counselors at Greeley High School. I work with the students 9 through 11, last names A through L.
And I'm Mandy Anderson. I'm the school counselor for students at Greeley High School with the last names M through Z. First, we do want to acknowledge the challenges that our current situation has created for our students and their families. We too are missing the opportunities to connect in person. Please know we're still here for questions, and our contact information is shared at the end of this presentation. To begin with, we've arranged a few events for students and families. This Friday, May 4th, that was when this slideshow was shared. And then next week, Thursday, May 7th, from 4:30 to 5:30, 8th grade parent question and answer night will happen. This is an opportunity to meet with your student school counselor and ask any further questions. Links to this event is at the end of this presentation, as well as in the email that contained this presentation. May 8th, 8th grade course requests will be visible for parents and students through PowerSchool. These were inputted by the middle school team of teachers. They do not include all course requests, as we will be meeting with students at a later date to talk about these options. On May 12th to the 15th, we'll be meeting with students virtually in small group student meetings. We'll be sending out Google Hangout invites to student emails, so please encourage them to be on the lookout for these. June 2nd to the 5th, this is when we'll be meeting with each student for a quick one-on-one virtual meeting to choose the rest of their classes or make any necessary changes. We'll be sending Google Hangout invites to student emails as well for this. And August 27th, this is when we're hoping to hold freshman orientation. Obviously, this will be determined on district recommendations. And fall schedules. Unfortunately, our typical timeline for having these completed has been impacted. But no, we are working on this and we'll get them out as soon as possible, most likely this summer. Placement process. So as I mentioned earlier, your students' 8th grade teachers have made recommendations for them in math, science, English, social studies, and world languages. These requests will be visible to you and students in PowerSchool after May 8th and can be found under the class registration tab. We will then follow up with your student, Ms. Mulligan and myself, to input the rest of their class choices the week of June 2nd to the 5th. This will include their choice of visual performing art or allied art or PE. And yes, with those schedules, we do hope to have them out as soon as possible. Something else we just want you to be aware of is that schedules are subject to change up to the first day of school. Sometimes teacher assignments or class time need to be adjusted, and therefore schedules come out a little different in the fall. We just say this because we don't want any student to be disappointed if some changes have been made. Course override process. So if you do not agree with the middle school teacher's recommendation, we have an override process. We recognize that typically you would have been able to talk about placement at spring teacher conferences. So if you have any questions about your student's placement, reaching out to their middle school teacher may give some insight into why the recommendation was made. If you still feel that you'd like to move forward, we just ask that you email Ms. Mulligan or myself. Ms. Mulligan has the last names A through L and myself M through Z to get an override form. At which point, just complete the form and return it back to us, and we'll make the changes once we've received the form. Educational pathways. We want to impress that there are multiple educational pathways for students through high school. It's important that your student individualizes their own educational journey. For some, this may be starting with one honors class in an area of interest and building on that each year. For others, it may be college prep classes all the way through. And for others, it may be honors, AP, IB. Students move levels from college prep, honors, AP, IB all the time. Students are also not stuck in one level based on what they choose freshman year. Sometimes students will need to do additional coursework to move levels. An example being if you take CP Algebra 1 and want to take Honors Algebra 2 as a student later on, you may need to do some additional curriculum work to support the transition. Doable for a student who is ready for this. Prerequisites are provided for each course in the course of study, as well as visual pathways. A link to our course of studies is in the following slide and can also be found on the Greeley Guidance webpage for reference. Graduation requirements. Currently, Greeley High School requires 18 credits for graduation. This is the bare minimum for graduation and is different to what may be required for college admission. Students will satisfy most of these requirements by the end of junior year, allowing them to select courses to support future ambitions. We also do not have a world language requirement, but do encourage students to take as many years as possible. Any credit after graduation requirements are met are considered elective. An example, the fourth year of math will count as one elective. So for most students, this is a requirement they do not need to be concerned about at all. And as you can see highlighted here, the social studies and allied art, these requirements are currently under review, and there may be changes to these for next year.
So the typical schedule for a ninth grader coming into Greeley High School requires a minimum of 5 classes. As Mandy already mentioned, those 5 classes are typically these ones below: English 9, World History, Foundations of Science, Math, which would be based on the 8th grade math course, a world language, which would be French, Spanish, or students do have the choice of taking Latin, which I know is not offered in the middle school, or a student choice class, which is usually visual performing arts, an allied art, or a PE. So those are typically the English, World History, Foundations of Science, Math, and World Language are the 5 courses that are pre-scheduled into Power School. 6 courses is typically what a student might take. This would mean that they would have 1 additional course on top of those 5 in their schedule, and I'll talk about those in a few minutes. This 6 classes would allow for 2 study halls. Hopefully, those would be 1 study hall every day. If a student wants 7 or possibly 8 courses, this is possible, but oftentimes Ms. Anderson or I would want to speak to parents or maybe the GMS team leaders to discuss whether this is an appropriate choice that allows for good balance in a student's life. There also can be scheduling constraints when 7 or 8 courses are selected. Sometimes we just can't make those work all together in that matrix. The other piece about the schedule is most of the courses in the 9th grade have an option of CP, which is college preparatory, or honors level. College preparatory is really your standard level course. Honors, of course, is a little bit above that with a little more depth of content and breadth of content. The next slide is about the student choice classes, which I referenced on the slide before. These are the classes that students get to request after their pre-scheduled classes are put into Power School. Now, as a reminder, the middle school had made recommendations about course placements. Those are pre-scheduled into Power School, and parents and students can look at those on May 8th. The Power School will open up so that you can look at them. So after you get those 5 courses that are pre-registered in, students are able to add at least 1 full year class or 2 half-year classes. This would equal the 6 courses in a schedule, both first and second semester. And this will become clearer as soon as I show you the visuals of the schedules. A student may choose to, as I mentioned, a student may choose to add a 7th class into their schedule. Some students will choose to add 6.5. So they'll have a full year of a student choice class and then a 1 semester. And again, I will show you a visual of what that looks like. A lot of this is about what the student and the parents feel is appropriate. The student choice options can be seen and accessed through the Greeley High School course of studies, and there is a link at the bottom of this slide. This whole slide presentation was emailed home to you so that you could access those links easier. Typically, students would choose from the visual performing arts, physical education, or allied art options. Lastly, I would like to remind parents and students that Ms. Anderson and I will be scheduling short, about 5-minute meetings with every 8th grader. And during that meeting, we will sit with them and help them with their choice selection so that they can ask questions about what makes sense, what their schedule would look like if they added 1 full year or if they added 2 full years, and make it a little bit easier, because I know that this is always something that is very individual to the student. This first example schedule is one that has 6 classes, jazz band being one of the classes. Now please notice that there is a maroon day and a white day, an M and a W day, and you read this across. So on the first day of school, if that would be a maroon day, the second day of school would be a white day, then the third day would be a maroon day, the fourth day, a white day, and so on. And it keeps cycling through. Students will have a calendar, and on the calendar, it will say MW for every day of the week so that you can see throughout the whole year what are your maroon days and white days. So you read this across. So on a maroon day, this student has 4 different classes. They start with world history at a CP level, then they go to study hall during second period, then they go to jazz band honors, then there's an advisory, and then there's a foundations of science at the end of the day. On a white day, the student starts with geometry honors, English 9 CP, Spanish 2, advisory again, and then study hall at the end of the day. So each class is every other day. The classes are about 82 minutes. Advisory is 12 minutes every day except on Wednesdays. There is something important to note, that advisory may look different next year. There's a possibility that it will, and probably likely. Historically, advisory has been 12 minutes every day except Wednesdays. However, I would ask that you just remain patient as we develop our revised plan. This has been somewhat put on hold due to the COVID situation, and we are trying to figure out what this will look like next year. So I just don't want you to be tied to the idea of the 12-minute advisory. So as I mentioned, this schedule has the jazz band in it, along with 5 other classes, so this is 6 classes in total. Jazz band is considered their student choice class. Okay, so this is a visual performing art class and will provide them with 1 credit in the visual performing art graduation requirement. For band and chorus classes, that includes jazz band, audition classes, madrigals, treble, choir, band, and chorus, there is a practice expectation, and this is similar to homework expectation in other classes. This is to be completed outside of class. Most of the students do this during a study hall time because they can have access to the practice rooms in the band area, in the Performing Arts Center. The other thing to note is lunches. Lunches can be very confusing at the high school, but I assure you it's confusing for all of the students in the first couple weeks of school. There are 3 lunches in the high school. There is one before 3rd period. There is a second lunch that's in the middle of 3rd period. And then there's the 3rd lunch, which is at the end of 3rd period. What lunch a student goes to depends on their 3rd period class. So for example, the student who has jazz band has 3rd lunch. They would have lunch at the end. So they would go to jazz band and then they would go to lunch. Another student may have a class where they go to lunch at the beginning of the period and then they go to their 3rd period class. The student that has study hall, and I will show this on a new slide, the student that has study hall goes to study hall for 40 minutes, then they go to a 20-minute lunch, then they go back to study hall for 40 minutes. And while this may seem like it's complicated, I will say the student that has study hall does have a break in their work time that's embedded into that 3rd period. So they only have to work for 40 minutes before they have a break. I assure you that students will pick up on this schedule very, very quickly. And given the fact that this spring is so confusing and we don't have an opportunity to do step-up day with the students, obviously we were going to be more accessible and take more time in the fall to support them through this. This schedule is an example of a student who has 7 classes, a mix of honors and CP. So again, as I said in the last one, you're reading across on a maroon day, English 9 honors, Spanish 2, study hall. Notice that study hall is first and second. That line in the third period indicates the top part is the first semester class and the second half is the second semester class. Then there's advisory, and then it's Algebra 1. On a white day, it's Foundations of Science Honors, Foundations of Art. Notice that Foundations of Art is one of the students' student choice classes in the visual performing art. World History Honors Advisory, and then this student has chosen a 7 class for their student choice, first semester as Intro to PE and second semester as Team Sports. So this student only has 1 study hall, and that study hall is third period on a maroon day. So this slide I will go through a little faster, actually the next 2. This schedule has 6.5 classes. They're all college prep or CP courses. You notice it starts on a maroon day with study hall both semesters. Foundations of Science. This student has Foundations of Art during third period. And then on a white day, if you notice, this student has Intro to PE first semester and study hall second. So what this means is that first semester, the student has 1 study hall on maroon days, first period. But second semester, they have 2 study halls on a maroon day first period and on a white day first period. And this student will complete their visual performing art with Foundations of Art and their first part of their PE with Intro to PE, so half a credit. A student who might choose to take PE might be someone who has sports second semester. They want to take a PE class. They would like to try and get that in first semester so that they have more time in their schedule, study hall time in their schedule during the second semester when their sports season is stronger. We can't always guarantee that we can place that class in a first or second semester. Sometimes it just doesn't work. But if a student has a preference, then by all means, you can let us know during that student choice meeting we have with the students. And we certainly can try and do that. But again, there are no guarantees that it will actually work. This last schedule is one where a student has 7 classes. Majority of the classes are honors with English 9 honors, Foundations of Science honors. Then the student has French 2. This is on a maroon day. Advisory, study hall both semesters. On a white day, they start with Geometry honors, Latin 1, band, advisory, and then world history. So notice the difference in this one is this student has band, but they also are taking 2 languages. They are continuing with their middle school language of French, but they have added an additional language of Latin into their schedule. This is something that students can do, is take 2 languages, or they can also switch their language with discussion with their parents and whatnot. So this student does have 7 classes, 1 study hall each semester. The next couple of slides are just about things that would be important to know as you come up to the high school. One very big important thing is that the grading scale is different between GMS and GHS. At GMS, a passing grade in your classes is a 60. At the high school, a passing grade is a 70. So that's a very big difference for kids and something that it takes a little bit in the fall for them to remember. So a student passes or fails a class based on the year-end grade. So for example, you could fail a quarter of English, but at the end of the year you have a 70 or better, so you've passed that class even though one of your quarters was a failing grade. So it's your final grade in the class that indicates a pass or a fail. The grades in the high school, all the way up the grading scale is different. So for example, an A is a 93 to 100, a B is an 85 to a 92, a C is a 76 to an 84, and a D is a 70 to a 76. Below that is a failing grade. We also do quarters and semesters and not trimesters. So again, that's a little bit different. So we have 4 quarters and then we're split into 2 semesters versus the trimesters. Another thing is there is a difference between an honors class and a college prep CP class. The honors classes typically go into a little more depth in content and cover sometimes a broader range of topics. Is the work harder? That's always a question. Yes, sometimes. It oftentimes goes faster is one of the things that I find kids will say. So the repetition is less in an honors class than a CP class. Oftentimes in a CP class, the students are given more support during class time, whereas in an honors class, ability to work independently is important. Ability to access your teachers when you need help, whereas in a CP class, a teacher may kind of come up to you when they think you need help. So that is not to say that an honors teacher is not going to provide help to a student in class or not be accessible, but there's just an independent component in an honors class. The other important thing we want to remember for our incoming ninth graders is balance. We really want to make sure that the students have balance in their life, in their schedule, so that they are not every weekend spending hours and hours and hours doing homework and have no time to go out with friends or to play their sports or to do their activities that bring balance into their life. So when you're looking at a schedule and you're determining honors or CP, you need to look beyond the academics and also think about what you do outside of class. How much time do you have? How much time does it take for you to complete your homework? Some students are very efficient and can get homework done very quickly. Some students it takes longer. It's not about intelligence, it's about just time. So you need to really look at those things, because one thing I feel very strongly about is that students do have time to have a well-balanced life. And if you have questions about that, by all means, you can give me a call or send me an email and we can talk about it. The other thing is the International Baccalaureate Program, which is the IB program. I would encourage parents, if you're interested in this, to attend one of the IB Parent Nights. I'm not sure if Vanessa Gribben is still having those virtually or not, but she did have some earlier this year. Or to contact her. Her email address is right in this presentation. The International Baccalaureate Program doesn't really start until a student is a junior or a senior. That's when a student can start enrolling in IB classes. But we do planning ahead of time. So there's planning that happens a freshman and sophomore year in terms of class selection. And again, if you have questions, you can email Vanessa, or if they're general questions about it, you certainly can email myself or Miss Anderson. This next slide is some more things that are important to know. I talked a little bit about homework expectation on the last slide. So homework is usually an hour to 2.5 hours per night. But again, this is very dependent on course load, how many CPs or honors classes that you take, and your pace in getting work done. What's your focus? If you're doing your homework while Snapchatting, it's going to take you longer than if you are dedicating 30 minutes quick focus to your homework and then taking a break. Students can also get a lot done during study hall. So it is very important to use that study hall. That's 82 minutes that you can use to get homework done. Summer homework is likely to look different this year than in past years. If you talk to your siblings, 8th grade students who are in the high school now, they may tell you all these stories about all the summer homework they've had. For you guys, it's going to look different simply because we are not in school at the end of the year to provide you with your schedules and summer homework options. So more information will probably come in a newsletter from Mr. Hoffman, our principal. But for right now, just know that that's going to look different. Study hall as well. Study hall in the high school, which you guys, I believe, in the middle school call mastery. In the high school, it is not necessarily with your teachers or your grade level peers. You could have anybody 9 through 12 in your study hall, and you could have any teacher in the school. If we can put you with your teacher and one is available, we would try and do that, but it is very unlikely. It's not common. It is also not monitored the same way as the middle school because it's not your teacher. They don't necessarily know the work you have to complete. So while there'll be an expectation that it's quiet and that you are focused, they may not know exactly if you're completing your history assignment that is overdue or not. You do have access to math and English labs for all students during this time. So the math lab is accessible for drop-in if you want to go in and get help with a math problem that you're working on in your homework during study hall, or you missed a class period and you need a little extra help. You have to go in there to take a test because you were out sick during test day. Drop into the math lab. English lab is used very similarly. You can get help with literacy, in any literacy. So it can be for writing a social studies paper, a science paper, an English paper, reading a book, taking notes, lots of ways to get help in the math and English labs. If we feel that you need more focused intervention, then we may recommend more of a mandatory intervention where we actually schedule the support into your schedule during a study hall. And this would include the English lab, the math lab, or even the Learning Center, which provides more organizational executive function support. But that is something that we would talk to you about ahead of time. Portland Arts and Technology High School. This is a career and technical high school, and you have an option to attend this. Your junior and senior year typically is when students might go. Oftentimes, a sophomore year, students will go for a visit to different programs if it's a program that is of interest to them. This next slide should be a pretty quick slide. This has to do with dress code, cell phone use. We have linked in the GHS Student Handbook for you to look at for those things. I can tell you in terms of cell phone use, it is expected that your cell phone is away during class time. Some teachers will be fine if it's out of sight. Some teachers will request that you put it in some sort of device holder within their classroom. So that will come out in the classroom expectations that the teacher provides to each student at the beginning of the year. Lunches, we talked about how it's a little bit confusing of where it is in your schedule, but your lunch code is the same code you had in the middle school. It's that student number, so there's no change there. Lockers, each student is assigned a locker, and you can get a lock from the front office. You may not bring your own lock to school. You must get a school lock. Most students, however, do carry their backpacks around. Some students will leave their books in their locker and they don't put a lock on it. However, you should never leave anything that is of value. Not that the books are not of value, but like your phone or your computer or anything like that without having a lock on your locker. And then teacher communication. Usually we have to talk about this slide quite a bit, but in reality right now in remote learning, you guys are becoming very good at teacher communication and emailing and using the Google platform. So I foresee that this will actually be an easier transition for you guys on how to advocate for yourselves and how to do that communication. The next slide is on the bring your own learning device topic. Unlike at GMS, the high school does not issue a device to all students. So each high schooler does not get a Apple laptop. Some kids will bring their devices from home. Probably majority of kids do bring devices from home. This may be a Chromebook or this may be a computer. No particular platform is required. Families can purchase a Chromebook or a laptop. It does need to have an attached keyboard, Wi-Fi connectivity, and the ability to connect headphones. I will say one of the issues is if a kid brings in an iPad, that can be an issue because they are doing a lot of typing and paper writing with this device. The school will provide a Chromebook to students who do not purchase one on their own. If you need one of those for next year, you should definitely contact the principal, Chris Hoffman, or the MSAD 51 Technology Director, Dirk Van Kuren, as soon as possible. They just want to make sure they have an accurate number of how many students might need those, so they make sure those devices are ready for the students prior to the start of next school year. This next slide is a list of the clubs that are available to students. I will say this is an ever-changing list because students will request to start a new club, or a club will end when a student might graduate who had been heavily involved in that club and had started that club during their 4 years. But in general, this is the list of clubs that are available to students. This slide is a list of the athletic sports activities that are also available to students. And the next couple of slides will be a little more information from Mr. Shapiro that I will read that he has provided on athletics in the high school. So there's three things that the athletic department and co-curricular department really encourage kids to do. That's get involved, and get involved. This slide gives a little bit of statistics on students that are involved in sports, as well as information about the start of sports in the fall. So it is important to know that GHS fall sports officially begin August 17th. That is considered our preseason, and that's when all the sports begin. This is important for parents to know as they plan activities for the summer, vacations, and whatnot. There will be summer offerings, hopefully, that will be open to all students, and that will begin when the athletic department in the school is cleared to open up the building and make it accessible to groups of students. So just keep on the lookout for communication with that. At the bottom of this slide, there is a link to the GHS Fall Athletic Sign-Up information. This is a letter that David Shapiro has created to give very detailed information on the sign-up. The next slide will also give a lot of that information. I'm going to go over in very brief detail. It's not really my area of expertise, but this slide does indicate how to sign your child up for fall sports. So this is how to sign up for high school sports. You can again read through this very slowly, but the basic premise of it is that you register through the parent portal of PowerSchool. And you go in there and you click on the sports that they are intending to sign up for. This is really important because those little clicks that tell who is signing up for what sport in the fall helps the high school this spring get important information out to those athletes. So if you're a student who's signing up for soccer, if you click that button in PowerSchool, it allows our athletic department to know that you're one of the students who's signing up for soccer and you might need some specific information on soccer. So if you could get those signups done, that would be great. And then there are some documents that are essential, and those are listed on this slide that you have to have in order to sign up. So read through that and make sure that all of that is completed so that your child can start the fall sport on the 17th of August. And if you need any help, there are email addresses on here that will indicate where and whom to contact. Thank you for your patience. I know this was a long presentation. Normally we would do this at the high school, as we mentioned before, and it's about an hour-long presentation. So we've tried to condense it, but there's also a lot of important information. If you have questions for Ms. Anderson or myself, we understand that while you're watching this, questions might have come up. Please complete the survey. The link is here. It was also sent to you in the hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was emailed. This parent question survey will allow you to ask questions to us based on what you've heard today or questions you might have about high school or the overall transition. There are opportunities to ask both general questions that are just about scheduling or whatever in a kind of ones that can be answered for an entire group, or more personal questions. If your question is individual to your own child, we will get an email out to you directly. If it is a general question that we think lots of parents might have, then we will answer those on our parent question night. So on May 7th, 2020, there will be a Meet Your Counselor question and answer evening. This will be from 4:30 to 5:30 on that evening. Parents of students with last names A through L will meet with me, and parents with last names M through Z will meet with Miss Anderson. We divided these up so we had an opportunity, as we do typically on this night, to meet with the parents of our end of the alphabet. At the bottom of this slide, there are two links to Google Hangout sessions, one for myself and one for Miss Anderson. You can click on that link to join that evening's event on May 7th. Again, our hope is that if you answer this questionnaire with your questions that might come up, we can then answer those on that evening. I hope that this presentation was helpful to you. The last slide is actually just email addresses for people that, that you might need to contact. Thank you.